An old wealthy businessman had to determine which of his sons deserved his inheritance upon his death. He devised an elaborate plan to find the answer. But what Mr. Peter discovered shocked him. One cannot overemphasize the importance of hard work. It was a rule Mr. Peter liked to follow. He was a tough and hard-working man who had struggled all his life to earn money. During his childhood, he lived in the mountains with his siblings, mother, and father. It was far from civilization, so it was essential to be able to create work and earn a living. But he had the perfect character for it and never hesitated to endure hard work to earn money and support his family. He woke up before sunrise. When he was young, Mr. Peter would wake up and go to the fields that stretched along the mountainside. He harvested cereals and other products to sell at the market at the foot of the mountain. He had been doing this for as long as he could remember. Initially, he worked with his siblings. But one by one, they moved away until only he remained. He harvested grain on the mountainside. Life was tough, but apart from sometimes dangerous conditions, the money he earned wasn't fantastic. It was enough to get by but not enough to live too comfortably. Sometimes they struggled to make ends meet if the cereal yield was too low. It was a very tough life at times. As he got older, Mr. Peter promised himself that one day he would escape from this hard and tiring life. His life improved even more when he met a beautiful woman with whom he got along incredibly well. They shared the same interests and loved outdoor activities. One day, Mr. Peter decided he wanted to marry this extraordinary woman. And he finally got down on one knee to propose in Genuine. The only drawback was that even though Mr. Peter was very successful and had amassed a great deal of money, he had a big problem. He couldn't read. He had never had the opportunity to learn, because he had always been busy in the fields. It had never posed too much of a problem for him, even though it was something he would have liked to be able to do. He was too busy to learn now. Mr. Peter and his beautiful wife finally had 2 children, David and Ryan, whom he loved dearly. As they grew up, they were both eager to help their father in his business. But it was David who got more involved. From transporting sacks of coffee beans to assisting in sales at the market, he spent pleasant moments with his father. And it also allowed him to earn some pocket money. When he grew and matured, David began earning a salary for helping the business grow, becoming Mr. Peter's right-hand man. Ryan, on the other hand, was much more distant. He didn't like working hard, disliked mathematics and numbers, and detested being supervised by his father and brother. When Ryan grew and matured, he made it increasingly clear that he was not interested in the idea of continuing to help the family business. Mr. Peter still loved Ryan, but he would be lying if he said he wasn't disappointed that his son wasn't more interested in the business. He knew it was a mistake. But he had less respect for Ryan because he wasn't more actively involved in his life. However, Mr. Peter was becoming an old man, and he decided he needed to make a will. He asked his lawyer to draft the official legal document and help him make arrangements for when the time came. He knew it would happen one day. And even though he was healthy and strong today, he would eventually grow old and frail. The will eventually came back. But there was a problem. Mr. Peter couldn't read it. Ryan, the least involved son in the business, eagerly offered to read the document to his father. Mr. Peter appreciated the time spent with his other son. But the elderly man was often disoriented and perplexed by all the legal and technical terms. Ryan still helped and read the documents to him. However, David told his father that Ryan was trying to take all his money and company for himself. Mr. Peter didn't know what to believe. He trusted David and had forged an excellent working relationship with his son. But he still loved Ryan and wanted to believe that neither of his sons would try to cheat him out of his rightful possessions, his money and his company. But unfortunately, he felt like someone was deceiving him and was only there for the money. It was a delicate and confusing situation, but one with a shocking solution. Mr. Peter conspired with a trusted employee to fake his death. This way, he could discover which son truly loved and respected him and which one only wanted his fortune. After his supposed death, the plan was for Mr. Peter to simulate a heart attack at work. The plan worked like a charm, and Mr. Peter was convincing. He slipped away to stay with the employee until the day of the funeral, just 3 days after his supposed death. On the day of the funeral, Mr. Peter's family gathered around the coffin. Everyone except David. He was busy finalizing a big deal of which Mr. Peter wasn't sure. The family assumed it was part of the man's last wishes. Ryan was crying with grief and sorrow in front of his father's coffin, confessing to the coffin that he wished he had spent more time with his father when he was alive. Suddenly, the coffin opened, and Mr. Peter was thrown out. He was very much alive. He was shocked to see Ryan present and was furious and saddened to see that David couldn't even take the time to attend his own father's funeral. He was busy trying to expand the business and make more money. David thought his father would leave him in control of the business and that he was the rightful heir to Mr. Peter's fortune. Indeed, that was the initial plan. But everything was about to change. Mr. Peter hugged his son Ryan and apologized for not spending as much time with him. He promised to spend more time with his son and get to know him better. Mr. Peter made himself guilty of putting billions aside for David, growing his business. But he realizes today that he was wrong about Mr. Peter's will. Instead of David receiving all his money and having control of his company, it was divided in two. David was, of course, furious that his plans were altered. But Mr. Peter didn't care. He always respected David, of course. But Ryan was also his son and deserved his share. From now on, he wouldn't look down on him or sideline him. Mr. Peter learned a valuable lesson about whom to trust. Because even family is capable of stabbing you in the back and betraying you if they think they'll inherit such a large amount of wealth and power. After watching the first story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, let's watch another similar story. When this father passed away, his beloved daughter climbed into the coffin to kiss him one last time. Suddenly something happened that made everyone in the church cry. Once upon a time in the bustling city of Dakar, there was a young black man named Awa. He was the son of a famous and respected scholar who taught at universities across the African continent. However, despite his privileged education, Awa was no stranger to the poverty that surrounded him. His father's intelligence and success allowed him to escape this life. But he never forgot the value of empathy and respect inspired by his father's words. Awa dreamed of becoming a doctor, knowing he could also help others in this way. His mother, a beautiful and intelligent woman, worked as a nurse in a local hospital, and raised him and his 3 sisters. One day, Awa's father came home with incredible news. He had received an offer to teach at a university in France and proposed that the family move with him to Paris. He already knew many of his colleagues who had brought their families abroad, so he wasn't very worried about his children's future abroad. At first, Awa and his siblings were nervous about leaving behind everything they knew, but their parents convinced them it would be an exciting new adventure to experience in their lives. Furthermore, the education system would be better, and Awa's dream of becoming a doctor would be more easily achievable if he studied there. So with fear and excitement in their hearts, the family packed their bags and set off for Paris. Upon arrival, they were amazed by the beauty of the city with its stunning architecture and rich history. They knew it would take time to adapt to their new environment, but they were ready for the challenge. The family quickly settled in, and Awa began studying hard to achieve his dream of becoming a doctor. With the support of his family and the new opportunities offered by Paris, he was on the right track to success. The education system in France was different from what he had known, but he was determined to adapt and thrive. He was accustomed to, but he quickly adapted and excelled in his studies. His sisters also succeeded in their new school, and his mother found a job in a local hospital. Everything was going well. One day, Awa had just finished a long day of medical classes, and as he was heading home, he heard a voice that stopped him in his tracks. The sound was coming from a cafe, and he couldn't help but peek inside to see where it was coming from. Looking around, he saw a woman with a microphone in hand, singing at the top of her lungs. He was fascinated by her voice and felt drawn to her. He watched her performance for the rest of the evening, and at the end of the show, he couldn't resist the urge to approach her. Her name was Rama, and she also hailed from Senegal. Awa couldn't believe his eyes. They struck up a conversation, and he found himself captivated by the warmth and easy laughter of the young woman. In the following weeks, they went out together often, exploring the city and talking about their shared experiences growing up in Senegal. It didn't take them long to realize they were falling in love. Awa introduced Rama to his family, who immediately adored her. Rama had a difficult upbringing and had settled in Paris to escape a troubled past. But Awa's family welcomed her with open arms, and it was clear they would build their life together in this new country. As Awa finished his medical studies, Rama was a constant source of support and encouragement. She knew how much he wanted to be a doctor and believed in him even when he doubted himself. Finally, the day Awa graduated from medical school arrived. It was a moment of pride for him, and Rama was there to share it with him. They celebrated the occasion by going out to dinner at their favorite restaurant, and upon returning home, Rama told Awa she had something important to announce. Awa's heart raced as he listened to Rama's news. She was pregnant with their first child. Awa was overjoyed, and they both knew their lives would never be the same. Awa and Rama were filled with joy when they welcomed their little girl, whom they named Kira. She was a beautiful and brilliant child who had inherited the best qualities from both of them. Kira was shattered, but consoled herself with the thought that they had made the most of the little time they had spent together. Shortly after Awa's funeral, it was not surprising that hundreds of people came to pay their respects, as he had touched the lives of so many through his work. As the funeral procession made its way to the cemetery, Kira's heart was heavy with grief. She couldn't imagine life without her beloved father by her side. As the coffin was being lowered to the ground, the little girl felt her legs give way under her, and she stumbled, finding herself leaning against the coffin. It was then that Kira noticed something strange. Her father's face seemed so peaceful, as if he were simply sleeping, unable to resist the urge. Kira climbed into the coffin and leaned over her father's face. She brushed aside a strand of hair that had fallen onto his forehead and gently pressed her lips to his cheek, just when he had often done to her when tucking her into bed. It was a tender moment of farewell that deeply touched everyone. But then something happened that made everyone cry. When Kira stepped out of the coffin, a dove descended from the sky and landed on the lid. It seemed to stare at her intently, as if it knew she needed comfort in this moment of mourning. The dove remained perched on the coffin for what felt like an eternity as people gathered around. It was as if the bird knew it had a special message to deliver and wouldn't leave until it had done so. Finally, the dove soared into the sky and disappeared. But its message had been received. In that moment, the dove symbolized the love Awa had for his daughter and the deep bond that united them even in death. For Kira, the memory of her father's funeral would forever be linked to the image of that dove. It was a symbol of hope, love, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his daughter. Even though Awa was no longer there, his spirit lived on in Kira. She knew he would always watch over her, just like that dove in the sky. After watching this story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, let's watch another similar story. As the shells of artillery echoed through the cramped bunker, the grieving family of a fallen soldier were horrified to see their loved one's coffin placed inches away from them, curled up together, with their backs to the wet, chilly walls, were William and James, bracing themselves for what may be their last minutes. The pungent aroma of smoke blended with a metallic undertone of terror. A flickering lamp provided the faint light when the two men shared a look that was equal parts determined and anxious. They had endured and triumphed in innumerable conflicts, and their weathered faces showed it. William's voice remained steady as he proclaimed, "We'll get through this." James, in spite of the mayhem all around them, "We've faced worse odds than this before." With a stern resolve, James nodded. "William, you're right. We have come this far, and now we must not give up." Both of them felt a growing feeling of urgency as the enemy's firing outside the bunker became more intense. The walls seemed to encircle them ever closer, engulfing not just their bodies but also their aspirations and ambitions. However, a glimmer of unity emerged amongst the mayhem and hopelessness, strengthening their will to overcome all obstacles and come out on top. In unison, they nodded in agreement when they braced themselves for the assault, their hearts racing as they were ready to face whatever the future held. William and James's unbreakable relationship, formed in that brief moment of togetherness amid the thunderous noise of war, has stood the test of time, rising above the mayhem of conflict to serve as an everlasting monument to the strength of friendship and the indomitable human will. The 20 years of Marine Corps service that William and James shared were unbreakable. Even as the memories of the war began to fade, the distance between them didn't stop them from keeping their pledge. They continued to correspond through letters, phone calls, and, finally, New Year's Day visits. Their annual get-together became a treasured ritual, an opportunity to remember the good times and revel in the friendship that had stood the test of time. while enjoying homemade pie and sips of coffee. They reminisced about their life apart and shared anecdotes that brought tears to their eyes. Gatherings used to be more joyous, but as the years passed, they became more somber affairs as they remembered and grieved the loss of loved ones who had died in battle or from natural causes. Their bond became stronger when they grieved together, taking comfort in the fact that they were not experiencing their sorrow in isolation. Their friendship was ineffable, even in old age. According to William, who said that their closeness was unlike any other. Hearing of his friend's bad condition was a huge shock for William. He didn't think twice before getting on a plane to go see his buddy, whose nickname was James, who was toward the end of his life. William consented to James's request, which none of their families knew about. Even though he was unsure about completing it, William remembered the daily commitment he made to James when he stood firmly by his friend's side, fully aware that it would test his mental and physical fortitude. The loss of James came as a tragic event as time went on. William and James's families were devastated by his death, but they took comfort in the fact that he died quietly. James had previously said that he would prefer that just his family and close friends attend his burial. William and the others gathered to grieve his passing, as his friend had requested, on that solemn day. However, they were unable to predict the unforeseen developments that were about to transpire. In spite of their loss, they took solace in James's meaningful life and his global and national impact. Leaving his best buddy behind was a devastating blow to William. He felt as though a part of him had been cut off for all time, even while he treasured their time together, particularly in James's dying hours. He hoped his friend could have lingered. William struggled in the days preceding the funeral with the enormous burden of fulfilling his vow to James. He began to wonder whether he was capable of actually fulfilling his friend's request as doubt crept in. Uncertain of the obstacles that lay ahead, he prepared to execute his promise while keeping this weight to himself. Despite William's personal uncertainties, the vow he had made to James appeared to be the one constant. He was supposed to attend James's funeral, but everything else worked against him. There was an undeniable feeling of gravity as William's son, Bill, prepared himself for the challenging conversation that was about to unfold by calling his father's number. A growing sense of expectancy accompanied each ring until, at last, the receiver picked up William's crackling voice. "Dad. It's me, Bill," he uttered in a worried tone. William prepared himself for what he knew would not be good news, his mind already heavy from the approaching funeral. He answered with a note of fear in his voice. "Yeah, Bill. What's going on?" Bill hesitated, knowing that his father's troubles would only grow as a result of the news he had to deliver. He started hesitantly. "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but last night there was a pretty severe storm. Due to fallen trees and other debris, several of the roads we must travel to the burial are closed." William let out a deep sigh, his heart thudding at the prospect of yet another roadblock in his path. "Oh no, really?" he murmured, dismay evident in his tone. Bill could sense the fatigue in his dad's voice, and the idea of adding to his dad's already burdensome workload made his own heart hurt. "Yeah, Dad," Bill answered, regret weighing heavily on his own voice. "I've been looking for other paths, but things don't seem to be going well. Although the cleanup teams are putting out their best effort, it may take some time before the roads are completely clear. I regret to inform you that driving to the funeral is not an option. William let out another sigh, the weight of his vow to James bearing down on him. With a hint of annoyance in his voice, he bemoaned, "This couldn't have happened at a worse time. I promised James I'd be there. And now it feels like everything's working against me." Knowing how much this meant to his father, Bill's heart went out to him. "I know, Dad. And I'm really sorry. I understand your reluctance to fly these days. But it seems to be our only viable option presently," he acknowledged in a sympathetic tone. "If we leave tonight, we'll be there early enough to make the afternoon service on time." William hesitated a while, realizing what lay ahead. He admitted that this was the only way he could make it to the burial. Despite the difficult conditions, Bill was right. He hated flying. But for James's sake, he was going to put up with it. At least once. The flight was everything but easy. And the experience turned out to be turbulent. Unease spread among the passengers as turbulence rocked the cabin. William gripped the armrest firmly, white-knuckled when the plane pitched and tumbled. Bill sensed his father's growing nervousness and tried to reassure him. With some trepidation, he said, "It's okay, Dad. We'll get there soon." However, William's unwavering phobia of flying kept him transfixed on the turbulence in the skies outside, making it difficult for him to remain composed. The idea of flying thousands of feet above the ground had never comforted him. And today was no different. William felt a wave of relief after the touchdown. Their joy was short-lived, though, when they found out at baggage claim that their luggage was missing. Bill felt his heart sink at seeing his dad so frustrated. He asked, his head heaving at their situation, "What do we do now?" William seemed surprisingly composed, his determination evident. He said, "We'll find a solution," his voice steady in the face of confusion. "We can't allow this setback to hinder our attendance at the funeral." Unfazed by hardship, he led the way out of the airport with unwavering conviction. Their resolve did not waver when they came out into the bright sunshine. Bill was always struck by his father's seemingly endless supply of unflinching tenacity. Bill was ecstatic when they were about to leave the baggage claim area when he saw his father's suitcase emerge just in time. William's situation was finally improving, so they quickly went to the motel to change into their new clothes. Bill felt hopeful again, certain they would arrive for the funeral on schedule. This sense of comfort, though, was fleeting as he worried about what his father would do next. Bill's nervousness increased at the funeral as he looked around the audience for signs of his father. He had vowed to help his father through this difficult period. Therefore his heart was racing with concern. However, William had vanished from sight. Bill felt panicking, searching feverishly amid the sea of mourners, his mind spinning over the idea of his 83-year-old father making his way across the crowded grounds by himself. Bill pushed his way through the crowd and yelled his father's name above the somber murmurs. But no one responded to his cries. Panic was setting in. Then from across the courtyard came a familiar voice that shattered the tension. Bill was shocked to see his father, looking dapper in his Marine uniform, standing next to James's casket. "Dad." Bill let out a cry of relief that washed over him like a tsunami. He rushed to his father's side, feeling both proud and worried at the same time, his voice shaking with emotion. He questioned, "What are you doing here? I was so worried when I couldn't find you." William's eyes shone with determination as he met his son's stare with unyielding resolve. With a sorrowful undertone, he answered, "I had to keep my word to James. He pleaded with me to do it, and I could not bear to disappoint him." Bill's chest constricted upon seeing his father standing there without his cane. His typical stoop replaced with a silent strength that radiated from within. With a voice full of emotion, Bill whispered, "I'm proud of you, Dad. But please, don't ever scare me like that again." William nodded, tears still welling up in his eyes. With a scarcely audible voice, he said, "I'm sorry, son. I just had to do this for James." William was observed by James's family, who was a war veteran, standing next to the casket. They went from being shocked by the unexpected sight to being comforted by it as Bill explained his father's position to them. James gave William one last assignment before he passed away: to read his eulogy and keep watch by his casket during the burial. William promised fervently that he would carry out James's final desires, even though he thought it would be an overwhelming task. Their connection remained strong throughout the years despite their geographical separation, persevering through life's unforeseen turns and turns. William, an 83-year-old Marine, stood straight and without his dependable cane, honoring his friend by standing resolutely before James's coffin. He said a final goodbye to his good friend James with a sharp salute. With everyone watching with reverence, there was a heavy sense of seriousness in the air. Williams's moving remembrance demonstrated the two warriors' unwavering friendship. Now, James's dying wish, given to his loyal friend, was being carried out with the highest honor and dignity. William spoke to the crowd in a powerful, determined tone, telling of his deep connection with James that was developed and reinforced in the furnace of war. His remarks reverberated throughout the burial, making a lasting impression on everyone present. Many expressed appreciation for William's outstanding show of devotion and the deep kinship between the two veterans. Bill posted a moving picture of his father and James having a chat on social media, demonstrating their enduring friendship over time and space. In his article, Bill expressed how proud he was of his father's military service as well as the enduring tradition of commitment and friendship that James and William both represented. Weeks after the funeral passed, and word of William's amazing devotion to his friends and family spread around their neighborhood. People recapped the touching incident and expressed amazement at the two veterans' lasting friendship. Friends and acquaintances began to tell each other this story, which in turn sparked conversations on the value of friendship and the sacrifices made by those who served their country. After watching the stories above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.